The talk now is that Moses Itauma could be targeting a fight with Joseph Parker. Now, Joseph Parker, at the time of recording this, I don't believe he's even made any comment on that or anything like that. But Itauma, 19 years old, he will be round about, I think he's born the end of December. I think that's when his birthday is. So he's going on 20 this year. He has until May of next year, 2025, to break Mike Tyson's record. And that's the thing that he's been talking about from the get-go since he made his pro debut, even before he made his pro debut, really. When Frank Warren announced him as a signing, he was saying that he wanted to break Mike Tyson's record, amongst other things. But that was one thing that he really wanted. He believes he can do it. That's what he's pushing for. And I've seen it in other people's videos. I've seen it in my videos as well. When you mention Itauma, let's not even mention Itauma as, breaking Mike Tyson's record. When you mention him as a fighter, you see a lot of people who are like, who is he beating? Is he beating an ancient Marius Vac? And yeah, he's beating an ancient Marius Vac. He's beating a Marius Vac who probably doesn't take as good a shot as he did against the likes of Povetkin, Klitschko, Jarrell Miller, etc. But look at the eye test and look at what he's doing there. Look at the subtle little things he's doing. Look at the footwork, look at the speed, look at the power, look at the coordination, look at all that. And you contrast that, no disrespect, to someone like Johnny Fisher, who is someone who, bizarrely, Itauma stopping an ancient Marius Vac in 2 rounds is less impressive than Fisher stopping Alan Babbage in 30 seconds when Alan Babbage is not his previous fight, but the fight prior to that, he fought Lucas Rozansky, who stopped him in a round, and Rozansky will go on to get stopped in a round by a Coley. A clever matchmaker from Eddie Hearn, I give you that, but don't think that if it was a Itauma or someone else in there, and I look back at Alan Babbage and I think to myself, someone like Eric Molina must be absolutely kicking himself, because Molina is a much better fighter than Alan Babbage, certainly on his day. And he didn't even try in that fight. I'm sure he must be thinking, crap, he's that vulnerable and he's that easy to hit. Because Molina could punch. I should have tried. Because if I had tried, I probably would have won. And he probably would have, truth be told. But back to Itauma. A lot of fighters, a lot of fans, I should say, kind of seem, I don't want to say dismissive of him. But, who was he fighting and what did he do as an amateur? And listen, Itauma turned pro primarily to become world champion, but to break Mike Tyson's record. And I've always said this about that. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And what I mean by that is, do I think that there's the potential for Itauma to break Mike Tyson's record? Yeah. And listen, if he was to fight Joseph Parker, for me, I think that's a little bit too soon in Itauma's career. I think it very much deviates on the path that they have. For me, I wouldn't mind seeing Itauma fight Solomon Dakis. I wouldn't mind if you wanted to really move him on. I know he's already ranked, but you wanted to really move him on. I would say, okay, Joe Joyce seems like a actually quite reasonable fight now at this minute in time. I mean, he's so ponderous and slow and easy to hit. Itauma would probably light him up. He'd look $1 million in that fight. If you wanted maybe a bigger risk, maybe a Kubrat Pulev, and I say bigger risk, Kubrat Pulev is probably not as big a risk, but just a fiddly awkward fighter, or an Otto Verlaine, 2 very awkward fighters, awkward styles. They might not be as good as Joe Joyce. In fact, you probably pick Joe Joyce over them, but just awkward, really flipping awkward to look good against. Maybe that. Joseph Parker is still fresh enough. He's experienced. He knows how to get through a fight. He's probably forgotten more about boxing in the last couple of years than Itauma has his whole life, So that could be an awkward fight. But if he did take it, it would put him in a brilliant place to become youngest heavyweight champion. Because essentially, if Tyson Fury beat Alexander Usyk, I've no doubt Fury would vacate that title. Therefore, he'd essentially be, happy Christmas, you're the youngest heavyweight champion in history if Fury vacated it like that. So, Merry Christmas, young Moses, you are world champion. And you're not even 20 yet. You'd be 19, you'd have plenty of time to spare. That would be a Herculean effort to try and break that record if it was ever set. 19, well, basically 20, but still a 19-year-old heavyweight champion. That just sounds so unusual. But if Fury did beat Usyk, yeah, that I would no doubt that might happen. If Usyk wins, I would imagine Frank would lobby with the WBO to put a bit more pressure on him, potentially vacate, or he could potentially retire, which I think might actually be very likely. But either way, you become champion. It's a big risk, but there you go. A lot of people don't want to see, from what I've seen, Itauma break that record. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'll touch on that in a wee bit. But I've always said that in any sport, no matter what the sport is, you always want to see records broken. You know, Real Madrid in football, they've won the Champions League so many times. You'd love another team to even attempt to break that record, but Madrid keep adding to it. You know, Man City have the ultimate Premier League points tally. They're the only side to ever break 100 points in the Premier League. Someday I'm sure a side will break that. I was a big Michael Schumacher fan growing up, still am, and his record of championships has been equal but not broken, but his win record's been broken by Lewis Hamilton. I don't particularly like Lewis Hamilton. I thought Sebastian Vettel, who's even worse, mind you, he's even worse. Sebastian Vettel is just horrendous. I thought he would break it, he didn't, but you want to see it broken, because that's what records are there for. There's no point having a record if it's not there to be broken. The only record I look at in boxing and I say is unbelievably unlikely to be broken is youngest world champion of all time, Wilfred Benitez. That's unlikely. 17 years old. Oh, that's gonna be extremely unlikely. Doesn't mean it's impossible though. So Itauma looking to break Tyson's record. Listen, if he does it, more power to him. I mean, it's for Frank Warren, it is a sell employ that he will milk until there ain't nothing left, and even then he'll keep looking to milk it. It would absolutely shoot Itauma into the stratosphere in terms of a name. I mean, that be able to say you're youngest heavyweight champion of all time in history and the broken Mike Tyson's record, that'll make you a star, not just in the UK, probably make you a star elsewhere as well. Excuse me. A lot of the Mike Tyson fans don't seem to want that. I don't understand why. I mean, you can't knock a guy for trying. In terms of me, do I think he should? As I've said several times, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And with Itauma, I look at someone there and I think that he's not even 20 years old. He's so talented. You can move him a little bit faster, but why that fast? You know, I don't see an issue with him fighting Solomon Dakis or David Adelaide. Maybe then fighting a European level type fighter. You know, then maybe fighting the Joe Joyce, or maybe Joe Joyce sooner. No, I don't necessarily see a problem with that because it standed him in good stead. Charles Martin would be a very good opponent, I think, to get for young Itauma. I think he'd really be able to gauge really well with a Charles Martin where Itauma is. And I think that's an opponent they should look at. I think that if you become heavyweight champion, you're obliged. Like Anthony Joshua wasn't ready in a sense of he wasn't developed enough in his pro career to become heavyweight champion when he beat Charles Martin back in 2016. But he took that title and he went with it, and he had to be fast tracked. He was able to do very well. He was able to unify, but you got to remember he was in a world title fight with Vladimir Klitschko a little over 1 year after winning that title, and even then, that was in hindsight too soon. He came through it, but he nearly blew himself out in that fight. He nearly ended up getting knocked out. He gassed, things that he probably wouldn't. I mean, if you took the Joshua of today, who was probably not in his athletic peak as he was back then, and put him in that same situation, no doubt in my mind it'd be a different situation. It'd be different altogether. He wouldn't blow his tank as quick as he did. He probably might still get dropped. I'm sure no doubt he would have still got dropped if he got hit by that right hand, but would he be in the position to get hit with that right hand? Do you know that sort of way? Experience counts for a lot, and putting a guy at 20 years old in at the deep end if he becomes youngest heavyweight champion, I don't know. They do say, what is it? The flame that burns twice as bright extinguishes twice as fast. I hope that's not the case for Itauma. And to be fair, I've met Moses a few times. I've interviewed him as well. Very level-headed young man. Very switched on. Really has a good understanding of what he wants. I like what I see from him. I do. He doesn't seem one of these guys who is, head stuck up his own you-know-what. Really seems to have a switched on good attitude, good mindset, and actually, to be honest, I quite like seeing that from a young fighter. Shows me that they're taking this game serious, and I think a lot of young fighters turn pro with tremendous talent. They don't take it serious enough, and maybe we see potentially promising careers. Kell Brook is a very good example, actually. Someone who, welterweight champion, but he should have done way more. The talent he had, way more. Ill-disciplined, amongst other things. If you know, you know. But yeah, that's the story there. Let me know your thoughts. Itauma, should he, just because he can, does that mean he should? Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.